The video just cut out because my battery had run out. But anyway, I'm back up. So I'm talking again, going back to that page. I thought it was really funny because it's talking. Well, I've changed the subject. It says man's first word agreed in history, ugh. Well, I don't know. That's a really silly title because ugh isn't actually a word. But it's true that it's what they would have probably said, oh, ugh, ugh, or something like just making funny sounds. And then I was kind of thinking, well, this is, if I'm going to turn this into the world's first argument, because they look like, so I was looking at the pictures and trying to get a better title. I don't know who did this. I think he deliberately had shitty titles because one day God is going to use this to create much better titles, and then hopefully people will be able to compare his titles with my titles and be like, yours are better. Plus, I'm actually from this time, so to try and turn things like that into a sort of more realistic version of the truth, I feel like it's actually quite a funny thing. But yeah, a more realistic version of this is woman makes woman makes language and man disagrees. And as part of the disagreeing, he doesn't know how to speak language, so he can't be pointing at her and saying "you God," because that would mean that he does know language. But if I turn it into "you go," then I was thinking, well, that's actually like what's going to happen in this time. People are going to learn who God is, and they're going to say, "No, God, you have to leave because you're not welcome in this world. You're a devil. You're not a God." A lot of people are going to see me as the Antichrist. A lot of people are going to see me as a false Messiah. A lot of people are going to see me in that way. But then I also remembered that this guy doesn't actually speak language. Hence, it's probably better to have the O like half on, half off. That way, it shows how he doesn't understand language, so he's just saying like he's not talking properly. She does that. She is trying to form language, so is getting everything misunderstanding everything and thinking that he's saying "you go," and then so she responds by saying "no, you go." So it's an argument because he's just saying rubbish. She's thinking that he's insulting her, which is kind of what's happening in this age. People seem to be making songs, and it is very insulting. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why they think that they're not insulting me, but they have been insulting me. But just in the same way, this guy is not actually insulting her. He's just doing whatever he's kind of programmed to do or whatever he wants to do. She, however, is trying to understand things, which is me, trying to understand things in my version, my telling, my way, and she thinks that he is telling her to go, because that looks like you're saying go. So I love that, and I've turned it into, because I like, there was the word historic there. And I wanted to put a word there. So man's first historic argument. That's what I've turned it into. But yeah, I think that's really cool, and it's interesting how the sun could be turned into so many different things. You can put an R there, and then it's the run, so it's the big run, which is where all the guys who don't want to, because right now I'm trying to I'm trying to get people to talk to God. They're trying to get people to talk to me technically, through actual language. But they're more into a lot of people. I don't know who's interested, and more interested in speaking to me through time and space by creating stuff, things that I will click on through the internet. I seem to be connecting through the internet, and it's interesting how there's the bit about flame. I made an article about fire, talking about fire in the same way that people would talk about AI. A lot of people say, "Oh no, AI is dangerous. It's going to take over the world." It's a risk. It's risk to us all. And I've changed it so that it's now. So I've made an article basically, which is what people nowadays would say about AI, but I've made it what the Neanderthals would have said about fire. Oh, it's going to burn down our thatched houses. It's going to our kids are going to start playing with it, and always got the devil inside of it. A lot of people nowadays might actually still believe. I don't think they believe that there's a devil inside fire, but they believe that there's a devil somewhere. They actually, yeah, they think there's a devil inside the AI. Some people on this planet believe that there's a devil inside AI, and that AI is going to, or the devil is going to use AI to form an antichrist and control the world. And I bet that in the Neanderthal times, the same thing would have been happening, but with fire. There would have been Neanderthals that would have thought that fire is part of the devil, and anyone who gets involved or plays with fire is actually becoming like a devil worshipper or something. I bet that would have happened. So I've turned something that's a real life, real day scenario, or real things that happen in now times. I can't even speak in now times, and I've try to put them into stories in the past, only changing a couple of words. So instead of talking about humankind, we're talking about Neanderthal kind, and also pointing out that Neanderthals aren't actually kind. But yeah, I like it, and the I think I need to actually have probably a before and after page. If I'm tempted to put the before and after page up so you can see what the original writer did versus what I've done. There is one about Neanderthal. Um, there's one that has like a big a big thing on it. There we go. So there's this one, which has all these weird. I don't know what. I don't really get some of the titles. Uproar as Tufts demand rights to hunt mammal. I mean, that's. I don't know, but I would think that I've turned that into, what's on the menu, new things on the menu, and then I also talked about it being a political debate because I noticed that it said up there the big political debate, and I don't really understand how that links to that, but that's how a lot of the book is. I don't understand, like a lot of the stuff. There's titles that don't seem to link any of the other stories on the page. But when I've kind of recreated and retold the stories, I'm looking at the titles around and thinking, actually, that links far better to the title that I've made. And I was calling the political debate because mammals became an item on the menu when monkeys learnt how to kill them through traps. But the big political debate is, do they share the information about how to kill them, or do they hide it? Because if they expose the information of how to kill these things, all the other tribes are going to kill these things, and therefore there'll be less items on the menu for them. I mean, how can they kill and eat these things if all the other tribes are killing and eating these things? And therefore that probably would have been the first political debate. So I'm not too sure how the big political debate links to Toffs. I mean, is that a restaurant? Toffs demand rights to hunt. So I don't know. It doesn't really make sense why that's. Maybe it does in a way. I'm not really reading the small print either. I don't like reading, so I'm just reading the headlines and seeing what information I'm getting from it. But I would love to work with the person who did this and get them to change all the titles. I don't know. I'm doing a very simple like version of it because I'm dyslexic, so I don't want to write too much words. So I'm trying to stick with headlines. Headlines are actually more fun. But yeah, the stories are interesting too because I would turn that story into a big political debate as to, do you share the knowledge or do you not? And then there's also the idea of there would have been a lot of early style pillaging where a group of tribe would have seen that another tribe has maybe one of these elephants and would kill the tribe to get one of those elephants. I mean, if that's a month's worth of food plus all the weapons that they have and stuff, why work when you can just kill the tribe? But the political part of it is working out whether or not to tell the other tribes. I mean, if you tell the other tribes the information on how to make weapons, then they're going to go off and make weapons. They might, though, use those weapons against you, or you can get in there first, kill them, and steal their weapons. So on one hand, you've got the good, which is that you might, if they make lots of weapons, you might be able to make more weapons and then kill them and then steal their weapons and have even more weapons. They might capture one of these things or two of these things, and then you might kill the tribe or chase the tribe off, and you've got your meal and you haven't done that much work because they're the ones who did the work and you've just chased them off. But yeah, that brings up like the first idea of politics, and it also cheered me up because it does feel annoying how there's so many people who are doing work that I would like to do, what I would like to be involved in, getting huge amounts of pay. I think politicians do get about 200,000 a year. I've heard of a lot of them, and yeah, it's annoying how I've stopped working. So basically, I've earned. I had one client who does a long session. I had him in the summer a few times, but I've basically made nothing compared to what they would make, and yet. It's annoying. But then again, I made a point that politicians are about earning as much or getting as much as they can whilst working as little as they can, and I just feel like that's the wrong way of thinking of it. You've got to you've got to like what you do. You've got to enjoy what you're doing. Life isn't about gaining things. It's about filling up your time with things that interest you. And even though this book right now is not going to make me a penny, I'm not doing it to make money. I'm not doing it to I'm not doing it for any other reason other than the fact that it's entertaining me, um, and it's quite funny, and I feel like I'm learning stuff, and people should work not to gain anything, but for self enjoyment, and I think that's such a much better way to live. And it's also a good way to live because on the political side of things, if a lot of people are not all just about trying to get as much money as possible, well, then it means um, that the ones that want to get as much money as possible can focus on what they want to do, which is get as much money as possible, and the other ones can just be like, okay, yeah, you can do what you want, but we're just going to focus on being happy, and technically, they might actually be happier. And the ones that want to just make as much money as possible might also be happier, whilst making up rules that probably just screw the place over. But anyway, I don't know. I can't insult politics because there's good and bad in everything, and there's reasons why rules are formed. There are tons of reasons. There are tons of things that I would say, politics is bad. But then again, without politics, you're just savages that potentially could be killing each other. It's bad that there are richer countries and poorer countries, but if the truth is the richer countries are actually just formed by people who have had a lot more lives, hence have developed a lot more brain skills or more power to rationalize and to think of new ideas and new ways. Well, then there needs to be some sort of hierarchy, because it would be unfair for, in a world full of 7 billion people, it would be unfair for the ones that are who are human for the first time versus the ones that are human for the 10th time. It'd be probably unfair to give everyone an equal life, equal opportunity, equal. I know that's what a lot of people are trying to do because they think that's the right, but I think that's the middle class that are trying to do that because they want to be the upper class, they want to be the rich, but they also know there would have been a time where they would have had a couple of lives where they would have been the bottom class, and they don't like being the bottom class, so they want to help the bottom class to stop the bottom class from going through things that they would have had to face in their 3 or 4 or 5 past lives. And so yeah, the middle class is good because we want a lot of people here. We want a lot of people on the planet, and then the middle class is technically what really forms the economy. The upper class are often just the ones that have had more lives, or maybe they're the ones that are just greedier and a bit stupid, hence chase after the wrong things. But you get a mixture, and the poorer ones are usually ones that haven't had much opportunities, but at the same time, if their soul chose to be in the animal kingdom for such a long time, it kind of just shows that they're less spiritually connected, maybe, because that's, I feel like Dala would have come, she would have had a child, and the souls that were most similar to her would have been the ones that went into this gene pool first, and the ones that joined this gene pool much later, they did that because of the choices that they made when they were animals. I mean, maybe it might have not been necessarily fair because they were just the smaller ones, but the Matrix creates souls, and over time, more and more animals formed, so more and more souls formed within the animals, and and that's the order. There is an order. Souls were created in order of first soul to last soul, and you know if Martin, who I think was my son, if he literally was the first soul, I don't know. I don't necessarily think he might have been the first. I think it might have been a case of seeing which ones were the first and then choosing which ones developed most. I feel like development and how much effort, how much work, how much motivation a person has to account to something. So it's not just this is the order the Matrix created the souls in. It's this is the order the Matrix created the souls in, and this shows the development. And every soul is slightly different because of the different experiences. You can say that torture and suffering is a horrible experience, because it is, But at the same time, these experiences, these negative experiences, actually make you a far better, more intelligent person, and it helps grow your soul more. So the ones who might seem like um, have the less opportunities might actually turn into the ones that have the most opportunities. Why? Because from their suffering and feeling like they're behind and their need to want to catch up, this makes them a better, stronger person than some of the first. So it's not always in the correct order of what they were made, but it's in the correct order of effort, motivation, development, and yeah, Matrix is a very complex thing, and I feel like this magazine that I'm creating, if you see things in the way that the articles are portraying things, um, probably give you more motivation to stop seeing humans as being your species. Actually, that's because when Darla came, she would have been a Neanderthal, even though she had different DNA, even though she would have counted as the first human. She would have been born from Neanderthals, hence Neanderthals would have seen her as a Neanderthal. And her kids, too, they would have been semi like the Neanderthal. The difference would have been very, very subtle. Okay, I think it would have been more physical because I think Darla didn't have fur, she had skin. And her child, too, would have been far less hairy than the others. So there would have been a slight physical difference. But yeah, it would have been the mental difference would have been very subtle. And I think the same thing is being repeated in this age. The difference between the smart ones and the dumb ones is obvious if I point it out to you, but it's not so obvious if I don't point it out. And I think the ones in the middle are the ones who are more confused about it, because on one hand they can see the ones that are mentally behind, but they relate to them because in their past life or the past before that they would have been the ones that were mentally behind. But they can also see the smarter ones, but because they don't necessarily see them as older, the smarter ones being older, they actually might dismiss them and say that this is nonsense or what they believe is not the truth. But yeah, I am. Hierarchy has always been formed, has been formed for a long time. The test on who can detect who Christ is has been here since the beginning of time. And even though consciously no one knew that, they would have sensed it because the souls would have entered into that gene pool way before Jesus or the stories of Jesus came. My next plan is there's a lot of stories about the Bible in here, so I'm going to change it. I think the one about Noah is it's raining, it's pouring, the old man is soaring. But I might actually just cross out the word soaring and say dreaming, and then make out that some old guy is having visions of a boat, and the idiots of the day believe it. They believe that the world there's a giant. I don't know. I don't know how I'll play it. Sometimes I get ideas when I see the picture, when I try and write the thing, and then I look at other stories around it and get more inspired. The chew jewelry kind of did make sense, but it doesn't make sense. Should we eat meat or should we eat each other? I mean, I don't know. That story is pretty shit, and that meat picture looks disgusting. So I made the meat picture smaller, but it made sense. Chew jewelry, cooked. Do we eat it cooked or raw? I think it unanimously would have been, as soon as fire came in, people would have been like, nope, cooked is better. But I think fish, when I came to fish, I got visions of Gollum and him enjoying eating raw fish. And I feel like they would have been more like Gollum and would have been like, cooked fish, cold fish, it's the same thing. And I know also sushi, a lot of people eat cold fish when they're eating sushi. So fish people might have not cooked fish at the beginning because they would have seen it as unnecessary. Plus, they would have said it falls apart. I think they said it falls apart because it's all wet and slimy, that it just falls off the stick and you lose it. And they didn't want to lose the fish. They thought it would be better to eat it raw and not lose it than have put it on a stick and find that it drops off into the fire. So I feel like sometimes these things bring visions of things, and that's just what I'm getting.